Adventure on Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipeman.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I'm here with our next guest. I'm very excited about, and kind of pissed about too, because they're going to be playing at Bloodstock, which is one of my favorite festivals to cover on the Pipeman Radio tour. I won't be there in person because, you know, my daughter had to ruin everything by getting married, and now I can't go to the festival. But we still get to talk to this band who has some badass music, and it's a cool story how they're ending up at Bloodstock. So let's welcome to the show, Root Zero. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, we're doing fine, thank you.
So one of the things I really do love about Bloodstock is that they really promote local UK music and the surrounding area. And they do that with doing these like Battle of the Band type of things going on. And that's how you got there. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I mean, trying to think where to start really. So I guess so we actually did this competition in the past. We did it for the first time back in 2022, which was our first year of actually playing as a band.
It's our third ever gig as well.
Yeah, it was the third gig we'd ever played. So we were shit basically, is the long and short of it. But we wasn't very good. Yeah, we didn't get past the first heat, but you know, like we kind of took some lessons from that, and you know, we've kind of, you know, developed and I guess like honed our live show ever since then. And you know, we came back this year, didn't really know what to expect, but you know, we just went in, you know, continued just to do what we do, and yeah, we progressed through each of the heats, got to the quarterfinal and then the semi-final, and eventually the final, which was at on a bigger stage than we played all the other heats at. It was at the Patty Pavilion in Swansea, which was exciting in and of itself. You know, like we were excited just to play at a bigger venue.
Right.
But it was it was 6 bands competing, so you know, the chances of us winning, we kind of assume we wouldn't win because like all the other bands were so good. You know, like there was a really fierce competition, but the judges decided unanimously that our performance was the best, which was obviously a really nice surprise for all of us. And yeah, that's how we ended up playing at Bloodstock.
So my first question is, if you were to have an opinion of why they picked you, what would you think it was?
It's a good question because I don't like shooting myself up to the moon too much. I guess probably, well, the thing that they said was mostly to do with like stage presence. So, I mean, it's just 2 of us here, but we're a pretty big band. We're a 6-piece. So, you know, like playing in small venues can be quite challenging, especially because I've got 2 keyboards, so it's quite a big, you know, our stage presence can be quite cramped on a small stage. But we really tried to sort of utilize that going into a bigger stage, and I guess that's kind of one of the things that we really focused on when, you know, because like musically speaking, we've been playing the songs that we have on our set for, you know, a good sort of 2 years now. But yeah, it was kind of like the stage presence that we really wanted to work on, I guess. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Sash.
I'd say we were excited to just be able to have the space to move around a bit more.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It kind of inhibits you because you want to do more, but it's not possible.
Yeah. Like in like we have a frequent we have a fairly frequent online magazine called Musipedia of Metal. Shout out to them, they're great guys. But yeah, they often do reviews of you know, gigs that we play at, whether it be the Metal to the Masses competitions or just gigs we play in Cardiff. And yeah, one of the things that they did say about a lot of our performances was, oh, you know, these guys don't really move around much. And you know, my response to that is always, well, you try moving around with all of our shit on stage, and
I know,
try not
right?
to get, in my case, try not to get your hair caught in your guitarist's headstock, and then half of it gets ripped off or whatever. So
I think we did move around a bit more to begin with as well, but said incidences happen with like hair getting caught and things.
yeah.
Well, as you're painting the visual to me, I think about back in 1999, I saw Slipknot play the third stage of Ozfest, which that stage is about the size of, it's smaller than any club stage, I can tell you that. Yeah, I don't even know how they fit 9 people on that stage. Okay. So I think back to that. I'm like, it is kind of amazing where they've come, because there's no way they could put on the show that they put on now on that little stage. Like you, they probably couldn't move at all.
Yeah. I will say though, getting a chance to see Slipknot that early on in their career, I'm definitely envious of you with that.
Well, you know who else played third stage that year?
Go on.
Mudvayne.
Oh, that's just made me even more envious. Mudvayne are like one of my favorite new metal bands.
See, now you're going to get really jealous. And then right after COVID, first Mudvayne show ever since like way back. And it was at a Danny Wimmer festival here in the States. And it was Mudvayne and Slipknot headlining that festival.
Nice. Yeah.
So I was like,
Mudvayne needs to come over to the UK at some point.
No, right? I was like, wow, this is really cool. The last time I saw these two bands together, they were on a third stage of an Ozfest, and now they're headlining like one of the biggest United States festivals there is. So that's what you have to look forward to then, because now you'll play at Bloodstock this year, but then you'll go to headlining.
Well, one step at a time, but yeah, we'll see. Obviously, it'll be nice to headline at some point. Yeah.
I love your persistence too, because it's like, yeah, it was rough for you to have to try out when you first started as a band, third gig ever, but the fact that you decided, because like even with that as an artist, it's kind of a letdown when you don't, even though you think you're not going to win, it's still a letdown not to win. So I think it takes a lot more courage to go back and try again.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like, it's weird because I'm not into like wrestling at all, but there was a wrestling quote I heard from, I think it was from Paul Heyman, where he says like, like when you get knocked down, you kind of learn about your mistakes. Your pride gets beaten, but then you come back and you're just a little bit more dangerous. And that's kind of how I thought of it, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't, we as a band didn't sort of have like a collective, they call it imposter syndrome after you, after that, you sort of go through the motions of, thinking like, am I just doing, am I actually good enough to be doing this, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. But, we just, at the end of the day, like music is a passion for all of us, like I've been doing it personally since I was about 3 years old, and my mum put me in front of a piano for the first time as soon as I was old enough to walk, so, like it's not something that it's not like, like if you kind of do a job application and then like you don't get it, for a lot of people that would be a pretty big letdown. But when it's something that's like that like music, which we all have like a drive and passion for, it's not like something that we're not just going to give up after losing one competition. And I've been doing this as a solo project since 2016. So like it's not like it's not like it's a new thing. So yeah, we were just gonna.
And you know what they say? They say it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. Like, and people think of bands like Metallica as an example. I was at their first gig ever. Okay.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And to me, to imagine like this year they headlined Hellfest. I was there when they headlined Download a couple years ago. To me, back then, the idea of them ever headlining festivals like that just didn't even enter my mind. Like, it's funny. Right before the interview, I was talking with somebody. I was thumbing through my album collection, and it brings back memories because there were a bunch of albums of bands that I loved back in the 80s that never made it out of the 80s. Like nobody would even know who they are in the 90s, much less today. So it is kind of amazing. You never really know where things are going to go. But like with them, everybody thinks they were an overnight success. But for 10 years, they starved, shared a floor, and ate bologna sandwiches with no bread. But nobody really knows that part of the journey of being a musician. You know,
Yeah.
For sure.
they just think you wake up and pick up this guitar or whatever, and you're a rock star. Like, and it's like that's so far from what it is.
It's funny, you've got a fairly similar story with Ghost, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I saw one of their earlier gigs back in 2013. They were supporting Alice in Chains, and like they were fairly popular at the time. But I was quite surprised to see like how massive they've become since then.
I know they have like a cult following.
Yeah.
Where was it? I don't think it was Bloodstock. I think it was Download, where they had these like photo booths, and you put like it was just like last year, I think. And they had everybody. There were more people lining up at this photo booth than at a stage to put these ghost masks on and take pictures.
Oh, well.
So yeah, it's you just never really know what's going to happen. And I think a true musician is just dedicated to the craft and doesn't even think about that part of it. I think the ones that make it big like that, that's really what it is. They never set out to make it big. They were just really true to their craft and really passionate about it and didn't care about being a rock star or any of that stuff. They just wanted to make their music. And I think that's what makes a true artist.
Yeah. I think that's the approach that we take. You know, like at the end of the day, you know, the most important thing to us is being able to play on stages and also maintain some level of professionalism with, you know, with the crew, and also giving the audience, whether it's one person or 100 people or 1,000 people who are seeing us, you know, a good show. You know, like at the end of the day, like I said, this is always a passion project for us. It's not, you know, like we don't really, you know, we don't sort of, you know, we don't wake up every day and sort of think like, oh, we're not playing headline stadiums. This is a waste of time, you know. And some bands never even make that, you know. There's bands that I listen to that have been going for, you know, 20, 30, 40 years. And they're, you know, they've remained, remained in the underground, you know, like maintaining strong cult followings in some cases. But, you know, like I've seen, you know, like these bands, they still put on kick-ass shows and yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and same for me too. Like I remember back in the 80s, my dream was to come to the UK because I was not only a metalhead, I was a punk too, and that was where the cool punk scene was. And now, bands that I loved back then, I've seen them at festivals nowadays, but they're, like you said, they're still basically a small punk band, like bands like The Exploited and GBH and Discharge, you know, like they're iconic, but they were never big. And and there is a big difference there because they are iconic. But you know, they were never headlining a stadium, but they still keep going. Waddy keeps having heart attacks and still keeps going.
Yeah.
I think it can be so cathartic, like performing live, but also like the songwriting aspect. Like, I guess some bands just don't run out of things to say and don't run out of new ideas to come up with.
Well, that's what's wild too, because I always think about, you know, how do you, after 30, 40 years, still come up with things to say, especially when you start off as a teenager with a lot of angst. And yet, with the world the way it is now, I think there's more things for metal and punk bands to say than even in the 80s. Like, it blows my mind. You think we would have progressed beyond that bullshit that we've lived most of my life? And here we are still talking about, you could substitute names in songs and it still would be a relevant song.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like a classic example of that would be War Pigs by Black Sabbath. You know, that song was written in the 1970s, and here we are, you know, 50 years later, and the lyrics to that are still just as relevant now as they were back then.
Right, exactly, you know, and so I think that's where music's really important too, because, you know, one thing that's been happening lately is, I don't know about in the UK, but here in the States, and I think you guys are going through the same stuff as us, is, you get all these people, because they're so political nowadays, that they get mad at artists for expressing their opinion. You stay with music. That is the biggest, stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, first of all, if you're an artist, especially somebody that has a following, why wouldn't you use that pulpit? I think you should. Why does one group of people have more to say than another group of people just because you have a different job? I think that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And music's all about expressing all that stuff. Like, whoever's saying that doesn't even know what music is, because that's.
I find it funny how. Sorry, I find it funny how people who express opinions like that, they'll always say, like, keep politics out of music when it comes to bands that, I don't know, will talk about things like, like, obviously I know in the US a big thing is healthcare, healthcare rights for people, or, like supporting, things like abortion or things like LGBT rights, and it's never like, but when you get people like Kid Rock, for example, who drops an album, drops an album where it's all about, like, oh, the libs, fake news and all this other bullshit, and then those same people, they're completely silent. They won't say a word about people like that. It's just, oh, you're not allowed to speak about things when you want the world to be a better place for more people. It's always funny about when you notice things like that.
Well, what I find funny and interesting, all right, ready for this? First of all, the hippies of the 60s are now the boomers. So how did that happen? And then okay, so a lot of punk bands I know are pro-government, which kind of freaks me out. Like, that is the antithesis of being a punk band. Like when did punk music become pro-government? It's just weird to me, because the whole purpose of some genres is for a certain type of way of making the world better. I say making the world better, because they're just speaking out against things that are done to human beings around the world. And why would you not want people speaking out to make things better for human beings? I don't get that.
I think at the end of the day as well, like, music has always been, it's always been an expression for things like that, like I just said, like ever since, like, one of the very first metal albums with Paranoid by Black Sabbath, like War Pigs is so clearly an anti-war song. So to say that it's like a new development is just completely, it's utter bullshit. But like,
well, yeah, you're an artist, you're expressing yourself, and like, how many artists in history have wrote songs because it had some meaning to them, or something that is going on in the world, or something going on with their mental health, or something going on with any of these subjects that these people you're talking about before say you shouldn't talk about? Like, that is why you're writing these songs. Like, it's the best therapy there is, I think, for both you, the artist, and me, the listener, because, you, the artist, get things out of your system, and me, the listener, I can relate to that, and I get it out of my system.
And that's that's ultimately what, that's the thing I hope that our music, and I'm sure other bands would say their music does as well. We, the songs that we write, they come out of difficult times, whether it be difficult times in our personal life, or in our personal lives, or maybe like, the sort of tumultuous times that we seem to be living in at the moment. Like, that's, it's something that it's like you say, it's a form of catharsis for us, and hopefully, it can be an equal form of catharsis for whoever comes across and listens to our music.
No doubt. And that's why I love your playing at Bloodstock, because I was just talking about Bloodstock to somebody earlier. One of the coolest things about that festival is it does create that community family atmosphere. Because we were talking about a lot of the European festivals that used to be like that aren't like that anymore. They've become more American. I'll put it that way, and Bloodstock is still that community family. And even the thing of, with Sophie Lancaster, you know, and
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that till I started covering Bloodstock, you know, and I think it's so cool what they do, because there has to be awareness like that. And, you know, it just creates us to be more of a community and more of a family. So I think Bloodstock is way more than just a festival. I think it's like, the best way I could describe it is like going home.
Yeah, and again, you know, like we always strive to, you know, ensure that that our gigs, whether, you know, obviously Bloodstock is a different story because it's a festival, but you know, like it's really important to us that everyone in our, you know, who comes to our gigs feels like they're part of, you know, an extended family, and, you know, like they feel welcome and accepted, because, you know, like at the end of the day, the reason that we play this music is because it's a form of art that's not necessarily accepted by the outside world, and, you know, like it's a place for, you know, for a lack of a better term, it's a place for misfits to come together and enjoy being misfits together. And, you know, that's what's important to us as well, for sure.
Sometimes I call it the land of misfit toys.
Yeah.
But what's cool about so everybody I ever explained to that's never been to a metal festival or a metal concert for that matter, is they have this viewpoint of what metalheads are. And I'm like, you need to go into this environment before you start talking. You'll find out what it's really about. Funny story. So I had, because I go on tour and I cover lots of festivals. And one weekend I had 2 festivals same weekend. So obviously I can't be at both. So, and they were in my same state here in Florida. So I had somebody at work for me. I'm like, you're going to cover this other festival. She had never been to a rock show ever, much less a metal show or a metal festival. She was a country girl. And so I said to her, I'm like, listen, you're going to have the best time ever. What you're going to find out is everything you thought about metal is wrong. And I'm like, you go to these country shows and all that ever happens is these, I'll say it, rednecks, they get drunk and get into fights. And yet they're the ones saying about the metal shows with the pits and stuff like that. I'm like, what you're going to find out is the pit ain't about that. It's not about fighting. In fact, what you'll find out, you'll go to a show, there probably won't be any fights at all. You'll find out that you'll make a whole new family of people, and how there's togetherness and there are no outsiders at all, because we're all the outsiders in one place. And she came back after that weekend and she's like, oh my God, you were right. That was the best time ever. And, you know, I made a bunch of new friends, and I have a new boyfriend now, and I have a new favorite band. I don't know if you know them. They're called Bring Me the Horizon. And see, I think if we would just expose everybody to that experience, it would be good in one way, bad in another. Like I talk in band friends of mine, we talk about this, and it's like, yeah, let's let them keep thinking that we're some scary people, because then we could keep it the way we have it instead of them all invading it. And so, yeah, I mean, and Bloodstock is just that. And so now you're going to be on the new Blood stage. So you're going to have a lot of room now to move around.
Yeah, apparently even more room than we had at our last, you know, the final, which was a bigger stage already. So yeah, like, you know, I'm not really sure how big we're talking, but, you know, like all, you know, more space is always good for us, because, like I said, we're a 6-piece band with a lot of equipment on stage.
So you guys brainstorming about like doing like a show like you've never done before, since you'll be having that room and be at Bloodstock, and, you know, give us the show of your life, right?
Yeah, we'll hopefully come up with some you know, some sort of new stage antics, and, you know, just kind of, you know, try and get as many people as we can do to come down to watch us as well. You know, like, you know, you know, that's one of the things about going to Bloodstock as a young band, as a new band rather. It's not just kind of like playing on a big stage. It's also like, you know, letting everyone know who you are, what kind of music you play, you know, what your music could be, you know, what kind of bands you sound like, and all that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, you know, a lot of people, they go to these festivals for the big bands, which is fine, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but, you know, like it's kind of an added an added little bonus of, kind of just getting your name out there and to a bigger audience that, and a more sort of like widespread audience as well, because it's not just within our local scene. It's in a big festival where you've got people coming, not even necessarily from over the country, but even just from different countries. Like you said yourself, you come over here from America, so it's like, just kind of getting our music out there to a wider audience is also really important as well.
Getting people to wake up to come and see us when you're on early.
Yeah, trying to get people to wake, who have been drinking the night before, to wake up with a hangover and come and see us as well. So,
I think you'll be shocked. I think you'll have a much bigger crowd than you're going to expect, because that's what I see happen at Bloodstock. And I think a lot of new bands, I think they're really good about the new bands and giving them exposure. And that is what, that is the thing for me. Festivals are where I find my new favorite bands that I like, especially when I go over to UK and Europe, because there's some bands I may not even know from being in America. And I go over there, and it happens every year. Like, there's a whole bunch of bands I'm like, I didn't even know they existed, and they've been around for a while, and wow, they're good, type of thing. So I think everybody listening now should definitely check out your music, because your music is badass. And if they can get to Bloodstock, they need to get to Bloodstock just to see your set. So how do we tell people to reach out to you, check out your new music, check out your merch, check everything that has to do with you guys?
So I guess the best way to find us is obviously on social media. So you can find us at Root Zero Official on Facebook and Instagram. We're not on Twitter. I don't give a shit what it's called now. But
I know it's stupid. I can't call it that other thing.
Yeah. But and then you can also find us on Bandcamp at wearerootzero.bandcamp.com. That's where you find all of our music. In
YouTube
terms of
as well.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. Just type in Root Zero Band. Specifically the word band, because otherwise you'll just get a load of ads about a potato brand. No affiliation with us at all. Although if they want to do some collaborations with us, then feel free to check us out.
You could do like an Eddie type mascot, and it's just a big potato.
Yeah. So if you're interested, hit us up. Just send us a message on socials. That'd be awesome. But yeah, that's where you can find us. If you like sort of moody, progressive, gothic metal, that's what we sound like. Like if you're into anything like The Gathering, Anathema, any sort of like Within Temptation, Lacuna Coil, any of that kind of stuff, that's what we play.
The last one right there, that's the vibe I got when I was listening to one of your songs, was Lacuna Coil, and I love Lacuna Coil. But
nice.
And I think the voice matched Christina.
Oh, thanks.
So there you go. So
yeah, they're one of my personal favorites. I'm half Italian, so
and they are so cool too. Like, they're not just great artists; they're just so down to earth cool.
Yeah, like I've watched a couple of their interviews in the past, and they seem like super chill. We're actually seeing them later this year it's October, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're going to see them in October. So we're really looking forward to that. Like, I've been a fan of them since I was a teenager, and I'm 28 now. So it's been a long time coming to see them. So I'm really excited for it.
Yeah. So I think people love you guys, because I got the Lacuna Coil vibe from your music. So.
Cool. Yeah.
And I might not have said that, but since you mentioned it, because I don't like to compare bands, but since you mentioned it, yeah, definitely the vibe I was getting. So
nice. Yeah. Well, if you want to come and see Welsh Lacuna Coil, then come and watch us.
There you go. Any other things you want to let the listeners know about that we haven't covered, Ray? I know last year you released your debut EP. They can check out. Anything else you want to share with them?
We've got an EP out called The Weight of What I Started. Don't want to reveal too much about it at the moment, because it's still kind of in the works, but we are working on an album. We dropped a song recently which will be on the album. But yeah, I don't really want to go into.
It's got a music video.
Yeah, it's got an animated music video that was done by our friend Robin Mikkelsen, who is
Nice.
a legend all around. Did it in that sort of like PS1 style graphics. It's awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much all we have, really, I think, unless there's anything that you can think of.
No, I think that's it.
Cool.
All right. Well, you guys rock. I'm bummed I'm not going to see you at Bloodstock, but you are going to rock that festival. And I can't wait till I have another opportunity to see you guys. Thanks for giving us great music, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Oh, no problem at
Thanks
all.
for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us, man. It means a lot.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.